you very much, Mingalava, and good afternoon, everybody. So actually, this is an event, very first time we try to organize with our key, the client, and also the people who are working with us very closely. And we hope and we are expecting that you will be receiving some new information from our event, and also will be some discussion point you'll be having. And I would like to request all of you that please try to be open with us and tell us whatever you think and getting a feeling, so that we can go for the next step actually. And I also would like to thank you to my SEA team who are coming down to Myanmar and helping the local team here, because this event we tried to organize since last few months ago, and this has happened for our key clients, making sure that the CPG category in the country is moving the cooperation between our agency and also with the clients and partners as well. So I also would like to introduce our new country MD, Yembo, and I would like to pass it all the process to the new MD and the team. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's given me a great pleasure and privilege to extend all of you a very warm welcome on behalf of Nielsen MMRD, and to say how grateful we are to everyone here. This is the first event of Myanmar, the Client Advisory Council in Myanmar today. You know, the industry is after big questions. Where are the opportunities? And over the last 5 years, Nielsen MMRD has provided data and based on the reliable and independent measurement for Myanmar CPG market. We also continually enhance our methodology, technology, and representative of the market to answer the most important questions which facing the clients and industry. It is our priority to maximize our focus, our commitment, and bring the right product to the market. And our commitment reflected in our 3 new operating principles, as you can see from the screen. It is the heart of what we do in Nielsen MMRD. We make sure that we are engaging with the clients, evolving our measurements, and take accountability that your feedback based on your feedback to prioritize our measurements and set up the solutions which is the most relevant for your business to make sure that you can run fast in your market and achieve more by doing less. That today's agenda cover a wide range of insightful from for the consumer behavior and the retail trends, and our product enhancements roadmaps, and our products, and we will have an open forum to hear your questions and suggestions. I'm certain that you will get a grateful conversations with us, and your time will be spent very well with us today. The next speaker is our Retail Measurements and Sales Effectiveness Lead, Nishan Bora. Let's give it a round of applause to welcome him here.
Thank you, Mike. Are you guys able to hear me? Yeah, at the back? Okay, thanks. I think this is be more. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming in. In the first section, I want to talk about what's happening in Myanmar. What we'll try to do in this section is we'll try to see how some of the macro trends are impacting consumer behavior, consumer choices. As a result of that, what are some of the retail trends that are emerging in the market, and hence, what does it mean for you as marketers, right? So as we start off, let's try to recap some of the things that we know about Myanmar. Right? It's a 54 million population. It's fairly big. It's the 5th largest in the region. not just big, but it's also a young population with a median age of about 28, right? It's still the fifth youngest population within the cluster as well, and obviously a young population presents opportunity for consumption growth in the future. It's a $70 billion economy, primarily driven by by services and by industry, and it's been growing at a healthy rate of about 6.8%. However, with the per capita GDP of about $1,200, which sits right at the bottom of the entire cluster, of course it has an impact on the way consumption happens in this particular country, right? So there is a lot of headroom for the country to actually catch up with the rest of the region, but there have been headwinds that Myanmar has been seeing over the last couple of years, especially when we look at how GDP and inflation has actually played out over the last 4 to 5 years. We've seen while GDP has been growing well, ahead of 6% consistently over the last 5 years, inflation has almost been meeting or even beating GDP growth in some of these years. And that, along with the currency devaluation almost 50% over the last 5 years, obviously has put a lot of stress on the economy, be it consumers' choices, be it businesses, and that reflects in the kind of sentiments that we measure both from a business perspective as well as from a consumer's perspective. You must have heard from us in the past that when we try to measure consumer sentiments, we've been seeing this, that for the last 3 to 4 years, consumers have been cautiously optimistic, right? The consumer confidence index for Myanmar has actually been consistently going down from 2016. It was up at 110 index. It's come down to pretty much about 103 or 101 index, over the course of the last 3 years. But what's interesting is, for the first time in the last 2 quarters, we've seen a little bit of optimism coming in. We've seen the consumer confidence index go up to about 105 and 104. Now, this consumer confidence index is essentially a composite measure of 3 questions that we ask consumers. We ask them, how do you feel about your job prospects? We ask them, how do you feel about your personal finances? And we ask them, do you feel able to go and buy the things that you need and you want? Right? So the composite score on all of these 3 is what builds up this particular consumer confidence index. When we look at what's actually driven this increase, when we compare it versus the last 2 quarters, yes, job prospects have seen some up and down movement. Yes, personal finances have again seen some up and down movement, but one thing that has moved up consistently is people's ability to go and buy the things that they need and they want, right? Now this, interestingly, is coupled with consumers' intention to save, and that's one of the things that's also been standing out for Myanmar for the last few years. We've seen over the last 3 to 4 years that increasingly more number of consumers said that they are cautiously holding back on their expenses so that they're able to save money in order to safeguard for the future. There was a consistent trend that we saw, but again, what links very well is that while this percentage sits at about 34%, so 34% of consumers have said that today they are cautiously holding back their expenses so that they're able to save for the future. This number is a little lower than what it used to be a couple of quarters back. Right? Consumers are still calling out that they're going to cut back their spends on utilities, on entertainment, on dining out. Some of them have even called out that they may switch to cheaper grocery products, in order to save, for the future. But what's interesting, the fact that fewer consumers are now still in the savings mode, it's probably actually some optimism, some positive signs for the industry. Now, if consumers feel more positive about their ability to spend, if consumers are consciously saving less, then it should translate into higher consumption growth. And that's one of the things that we see very well aligned when we look at the key super categories and how they have trended over the last few quarters. For the last 2 quarters, we see almost all of our super categories have actually seen a positive movement in terms of the consumption. Now, it's not uniform across all of them. Certainly, we've seen alcoholic beverages and non-food categories as the 2 ones that have seen more accelerated growth, right? Because we're looking at the growth of the last 6 months versus year ago, versus when we compare that in the growth of the last 3 months versus the same period year ago, we see that the growth is a lot faster for alcoholic beverages and for non-food. Now, of course, we're looking at this from a value perspective, right? And we know that there are prices that are playing a role in this particular market. So when we try to compare it versus volumes, directionally, it still holds true, at least for alcoholic beverages and for non-foods. We do see a slightly faster growth rate for both of those. Whereas some of the other categories, pretty much hold on to, their growth rates. Except for cigarettes, it seems a little bit of slowdown. Now, so with this particular context, we try to kind of get into the details, get into the trends of what's really happening in Myanmar. And one of the things that we felt unanimously is that actually one word that best describes this market right now is it's very dynamic. It's dynamic because there is no one-size-fits-all strategy that works in Myanmar because different trends are playing out, in different parts of the country. So we've tried to look at it from a price banding perspective because we've seen, prices have actually played a role and consumers are sensitive towards that. We've tried to look at it from a channel perspective, from a market perspective, and also how different companies have actually performed, keeping these factors in mind. And what are some of the learnings that we could get out of that? So let's look at what's happened from a price banding perspective. So what we did for this particular exercise is we looked at every single brand and we compared the average price of that brand with its respective category. Now, if the index is less than 80%, we call that as the mass products or the cheaper brands. If the index is between 80% to 120%, we call them the popular or the mainstream brands. And then if the index is more than 120%, we call them the premium brands. And we bundled this together across all of the categories to try to see how the consumption and how the growth is actually being spread around. Now, interestingly, as expected, given some of the headwinds that we've talked about, the cheaper and the mid-price brands are the ones that are actually growing a lot faster than everybody else. That's where, of course, a bulk of the consumption also sits, but the growth is actually a lot faster in that mainstream price band, right? But if you're a premium brand, right, the good news here is that you're not really growing very slowly. We're still seeing encouraging growth of at least about 10 to 13% for premium brands across some of the categories as well. So it's not too far behind. And yes,
is this value contribution or volume contribution?
This is value contribution. And yes, keeping that in mind, we're seeing that there is a sizable chunk of consumption that's coming in from the premium brands as well. So, point being, at a national level, the cheaper and the mid-price brands are actually have that have the tailwinds behind them to actually perform a little better given the challenges of increasing prices. But as a premium brand, is there an opportunity? Certainly yes. Certainly growing faster. But what we do see is that if you're a premium brand, you have a higher right to grow in lower Myanmar. Because that's where we're seeing that both the relative extent of consumption as well as the growth for premium brands is a lot faster, whereas it's been pretty much flat in upper Myanmar. The next thing that we looked at is from a channel perspective, right? What's really happening from a channel perspective? Now, we do measure off-premise consumption as well as on-premise consumption, right? So when we try to compare both the extent of consumption as well as the growth, one thing that we saw consistently is that the growth of consumption in off-premise outlets was significantly faster than the growth in the on-premise outlets. Now, the extent of this gap was the highest for alcohol, followed by non-alcohol, and the extent was relatively smaller as far as cigarette categories are concerned. So the question was, what's really driving this? Why is off-premise going so much faster versus on-premise? One of the factors that we feel plays out over here, it again goes back to pricing. We looked at the average prices of the category in on-premise outlets versus off-premise outlets. Alcohol is almost 2 times more expensive in on-premise. Beverages almost 70% more expensive in the on-premise outlets. Cigarettes, fortunately, the extent of price difference is not so much, and perhaps that's why the gap in the growth rates is again relatively lesser. Now, the overall index obviously will also get played out with the assortment that's available in the on-premise and the off-premise outlets as well, right? So we try to do a like-to-like comparison. So we try to identify the top 5 SKUs that are selling both in on-premise as well as off-premise outlets, and we try to compare what is the difference in terms of their pricing. And we do see that for spirits categories, it's still about 20 to 40% more expensive. For beer, it's about 10 to 20% more expensive. For spirits, it's it ranges between similar pricing to close to about 20% more expensive. So this could possibly be one of the factors that's actually driving consumers towards off-premise outlets. Just ensure look out for better value. Now, what we've also seen happening is we've seen fewer consumers actually hanging out in on-premise outlets. So consumers themselves, the fewer consumers are consciously going to on-premise outlets when we look at the trend over the last couple of years. So this puts across a couple of interesting things that could actually be playing out in the market. One of the factors could be that people are buying from off-premise outlets, and are probably perhaps more comfortable or enjoy a more intimate time with their friends and family by consuming that at home in an environment they're more comfortable with, right? Or we've heard of instances where consumers are buying from off-premise outlets and going to an on-premise outlet and pay a certain corkage, which in certain cases still turns out to be a little cheaper than buying that same SKU from an on-premise outlet as well, right? Of course, these are trends that need to be researched a little more deeply, and we are happy to work with you to try and understand what's really driving consumers more towards the off-premise outlets. But it's important to understand that perhaps at the end of this, it could mean that there needs to be a certain, maybe there is opportunities from a pricing perspective when it comes to on-premise outlets. Maybe there might even be opportunities to tailor the communication strategy back to your consumers, depending on why they prefer to buy from off-premise outlets today. So this is something that we can continue to engage with you a little more in detail to try and understand what's really driving this. The next thing that we try to do is in terms of markets, and at this point in time we're covering 9 states out of the 15 states in Myanmar. Yangon and Mandalay continue to dominate with more than 50% of consumption happening in these 2 states. At a combined level, they're still growing at about 10 to 11%, which is fairly healthy. But we've seen other states like Bago, Ayeyarwady, and Sagaing, which have actually posted very positive growth in the range of about 25 to 30%. And it's been consistent growth that we've seen in these states over the last 1.5 years. Right? So there are more opportunities beyond Yangon and Mandalay in some of these states. What we also saw interesting is we tried to understand what is driving this growth, right? And is it more consistent? Because we've seen different trends playing out by alcoholic beverages, by non-alcoholic beverages, and the rest of the categories. We do see a little bit of a difference when we compare Upper Myanmar versus Lower Myanmar, because in Upper Myanmar we see that there is a relatively higher proportion of the growth that's being driven by the non-alcoholic beverages, whereas Lower Myanmar has seen a significant chunk of its growth coming from alcoholic beverages. So again, there are different trends that are playing out, and there are different areas to really focus on depending on where you're really sitting, in terms of these product baskets. And then the last thing we said, let's look at how this is playing out in terms of companies' performances, right? Now, across the 30-odd categories that we audit, there are more than 700 companies that are operating across these 30 categories. But almost 3/4 of the overall sales is just being generated by the top 25 companies alone. What was very surprising is that the growth of the top 25 is almost the same as the growth of the remaining 700 companies in the country, which obviously goes on to show that at this point in time, a big responsibility of growing this particular CPG space still actually sits with the larger companies. Now, even within the larger set of companies, when we try to compare their growth rates versus year ago, we actually see a mixed bag. We actually see there are certain companies that have posted envious growth rates in the range of 30 to 70%, whereas there are a few companies that have actually degrown, and then some that have pretty much remained in the middle. So we try to kind of flag them off into the top 5 fastest growing companies, the 5 slowest growing companies, and then the 15 about in the middle. Because we thought it's important to understand why are some of these companies growing so much faster versus the others. The first thing is we wanted to understand, does this hold out when we look at each of our super categories? The answer is yes. When we look at alcoholic categories, yes, there are certain companies that are actually growing in the range of 30 to 90%, and then there are some that are actually declining. And we're still talking about the top 25 companies which are generating about pretty much all of the sales in this particular space. When we look at beverages, the same thing hold out, and again the top 25 generate about 92% of the overall sales. And when we look at base, which is essentially the food and non-food categories combined together, again there they generate about 25% of the sales, and again there are some companies that are growing significantly faster versus the others. So what we try to do from this point is we try to compare the top 5 versus the bottom 5 growing companies on different parameters to try and understand what are the winning strategies that the top 5 are performing. Now we try to compare it basis innovation. Were the top 5 companies launching more new products which was giving them more growth? That wasn't the case. We try to look at it from a price point perspective. We've seen that the cheaper brands are growing faster, so was it that the top 5 companies actually have relatively cheaper products in the market? To a certain extent, yes, but it wasn't a conclusive evidence that that's really a winning strategy as well. But one of the things that stood out is when we went down to fundamentals and we tried to see what are the drivers of growth for each of these companies. What we tried to do is we tried to see the overall growth of the company, how is it spread by the distribution growth versus how is it spread across the sales per point of distribution growth, which in some sense could be a comparison of the push versus the pull, or the distribution versus the demand. And what is it that really stands out is that the top 5 fastest growing companies actually had a balanced approach on both distribution as well as SPPD growth. When we look at alcohol, when we look at the non-alcoholic panel, as well as the beverages, as well as the base panel. Now, this is something that's not unique to Myanmar. This is something that we've seen across a lot of other markets as well. And you may even argue that this is basic fundamentals, right? You focus on distribution and you focus on SPPD, of course you're going to grow faster. The fact of the matter is that not every company has been able to do that, and which is why there are certain companies that are really standing out versus the rest of them, right? And hence we felt it's really important that we call this out, that even if it's fundamentals, sometimes there may be opportunities on basic fundamentals itself, and that's really where a big chunk of the opportunity sits. Now, one of the other response that we've also got when we typically share learnings like these is that, distribution is playing a big role, but obviously, I'm a big brand. I'm already extremely well penetrated in this market. So of course, I don't have much more headroom to grow distribution. So for me, it's only going to be SPPD-led growth. And of course, that way, the extent of growth that I'll generate will be relatively lesser. Now, you're right from that perspective, and we wanted to validate this. So what we tried to do is, we looked at those same top 25 companies across each of these buckets. And we tried to see what was the starting point of distribution last year, right? Because we're comparing it versus Q1 of 18. We tried to see what was the starting point of distribution for all of these companies. The observation is right, that the companies that are well penetrated, most of them are actually sitting in the middle, because for them there isn't as much headroom to grow distribution, and they're focusing more on generating demand. But there were a lot of other companies that were at a similar starting point in terms of penetration last year. But the fact is, not everybody chose to actually invest behind expanding distribution. So the ones that did focus and invest behind expanding distribution really stood out in terms of the growth. And the ones that were not able to do that were actually sitting at the bottom in terms of the growth rates. So there are opportunities to expand distribution across the board. It's just about whether you actually action on it or not is kind of what defines how you're likely to perform in this market. And the question is, yes.
Can you explain this chart?
Yes, sir. So the bars represents the numeric distribution of each of those top 25 companies in Q1 of 18 last year, right? Because that is what is going to be the starting point of distribution, because when you're comparing the growths versus last year, this is the starting point. Now, the lines is more for representation purposes to show that across the top 5, the middle, as well as the bottom, there were a lot of companies who were pretty much at a similar level of distribution. Right? So all of them essentially had a similar extent of headroom to grow their distribution. But when we look at how much these companies are focused on driving distribution growth, there are only some that have managed to actually expand distribution. There are some that have actually seen a shrinkage in terms of their distribution. And then there are a few which have just about not actioned on that particular opportunity.
So that one, I'm going to take alcohol, the fifth one from top.
Yeah.
The 1% is growth in distribution.
So, like I said, right, we're looking at the broad trend across each of the 3 buckets. Right?
But that is
Yes, the 1% is the distribution growth for that company versus the revenue. Does that answer your question?
Sorry, but then what does the length of the graph mean?
The length of the graph is the numeric distribution or the penetration of that particular company in the previous year. Right? So last year, there were 10 companies that had a distribution of, let's say, around 30%. So all of the 10 companies had 70% more distribution expansion opportunities. But the fact is that only few of them expanded beyond the 30%. Some of them continue to remain at the 30 or maybe even reduce from the 30. And hence, the ones, what we see consistently across, at a broader level across all the 3 buckets, is that the companies that are focused on driving distribution expansion are the ones that have actually grown. Does that help?
And in the plus notebook, there's the top one is only 11%. So 11% growth in the distribution. But then why the graph length is so small, even it's in the top 5 growing?
Yeah, the graph is so small because its distribution or its penetration last year was not very high.
Maybe they were a newcomer.
Maybe they were a newcomer.
But even though there is top 5 growing, so they are growing.
They're
fast.
growing fast.
Yeah, thank you.
So, we wanted to try and understand what could be some of the factors which could be limiting, distribution expansion for some other companies. One thing that we do see for this particular market is that there is a high dependency on wholesalers to expand distribution. The last time that we did a census and we asked each of the retailers where do they typically source most of their inventory, 3 out of 4 retailers said that they source bulk of their inventory from the wholesalers. Right? When we try to break it down by markets as well as expected, Yangon is where we see a much deeper reach of distributors directly servicing the outlets. But almost 40% said that they're directly buying from the distributors. But as you go through the rest of the states, that number, comes down quite significantly. We're doing a refresh of the census now, and we've already seen some results coming out for Yangon and Mandalay. While Yangon, has seen some upward movement from an already high base, Mandalay has also seen, a rather, significant increase in the number of stores who've been able to source from the distributors. But it'll be important to see how, it's really happening, how it's really working out in the rest of the states. Do distributors really offer you deeper reach in these markets, or are you still significantly dependent on wholesalers? And after this is the last slide, because this particular point on dependency on wholesale is actually a significant point itself, because the minute you have high dependency on wholesale, you obviously have little control over how and where your products are going to reach. And hence it's difficult to ensure that your products are reaching the right set of stores and not just any store. Now, what do I mean by the right set of stores? When we've looked at traditional trade markets across the world, we've seen that not all traditional trade stores generate the same amount of sales. Right? There are certain stores that generate much higher amount of sales, and then there are others that generate a lower amount of sales. And hence, from that perspective, it's easy to identify which are the right set of stores, and try to really focus on building direct reach to those set of stores so that you have higher level of control, and you have higher levels of servicing to those set of outlets so that you can maximize the returns from there. We've tried to study this spread of sales across Myanmar outlets for about 5 key categories across all of the panels. So we've looked at soft drinks, we've looked at cigarettes, we've looked at instant coffee, we've looked at beer, we've looked at shampoo. What we see consistently across all of these 5 categories is that there is a rather skewed performance of each of the stores. We see that just the top 15% of the stores can generate as much as 50% of the category sales. If you go to the top 30% of the stores, they'll generate about 70% of the category sales. And as you go to 40%, you get 80, which also means that the last 60% of the stores are only generating 20% of the category sales. Right? So when you try to then work out the maths, the top 15% of the stores will probably generate 4 times higher throughput versus the average of all of these stores put together. So it's easy to call these out as a right set of stores because the kind of returns that you get from these set of stores is significantly higher versus all the rest. Now what was very interesting was when we plotted about 3,000 odd brands that we track today across all of our categories. In an ideal scenario, most of these brands should have been close to this green curve. The green curve represents the ideal curve. It basically represents these numbers. It represents that at 15%, you're generating about 50% of the sales. At about 30%, you're generating about 70% of the sales. So the green curve is what we call as a concentration curve, or what we call as a Pareto curve. Suggests how sales is built up as we get deeper into more number of stores. So if you really had a very efficient distribution strategy, really targeting the best quality outlets, your brand should have been very close to this green curve, right? And what we see is that there are, except for the brands that are actually really highly penetrated, when they get really close to the green curve, there is a lot of opportunity for the rest of the brands to really bring more efficiency in their distribution strategy. Now, of course, this could be led by higher dependency on wholesale, where there will be a lot of mistargeted stores that your products may reach out to, and then the key ones might be missed out. It's very important, so just to kind of build in terms of what the current scenario looks like, right? We looked at all the brands amongst these 3,000, which today have a penetration of about 15%. So in an ideal scenario, they should have had about 50% of category sales or 50% of weighted distribution. Their average is only about 16, and the best performing goes to about 22. When you go to about 30%, the best performing reaches to about 41%, whereas there's potential to actually go to 70% of the stores. Right? So the big opportunity in this particular market is that there are certain stores that generate much higher amount of sales versus the others. And at this point in time, there doesn't seem to have been a clear, efficient distribution strategy that focuses on building reach in the right set of stores. There are ways.
If your average is 16 and your max is 22, how do you get 50% out of it?
The 16 and the 22 today is the current scenario for the brands that have the 15%. The 50% that we've generated is agnostic of any brand. Where we just look at the overall category sales and we see how that is spread out across all the stores. And we sort out each of the stores in the descending order of the category sales. We see that just the top 15% of the stores generate 50% of the category sales. But it's agnostic of which brand is contributing to that 50% of the sales. So what it means is that if there was a brand that really had a very efficient distribution, if they would have been in the 15% of the stores, they would have been close to a 50% of weighted distribution, because that's more a function of the category sales, not necessarily the brand sales.
How do you arrive at that optimal sales?
So the optimal sales, okay, so let me take a minute to explain this, and we're going to have another session on retail analytics, and we also have a booth later where we're going to get into more details about this. But the way we built the optimal curve is we've taken each of these 5 key categories from each of the panels, right? So we've taken cigarettes, we've taken soft drinks, we've taken instant coffee, we've taken beer, and we've taken shampoo. So it covers each of the 5 pillars that we captured. For each of these categories, we saw the sales that is generated for the category across the stores from our retail audit panel, right? So we know that there are certain stores that are generating higher sales and certain stores that are generating lower sales. So the way this gets built up is this is actually a cumulative sales across all of those stores. So we start off with the stores that are generating the highest extent of sales, and then we keep adding up the sales of the next store. So when we build that when we plot that cumulative curve, this is the curve, this is the optimal curve that comes out. Because just the top 15 is going to already take us to about 50% of the overall category sales. And there are ways, and now we're bringing capabilities, and Momita is going to talk about this later, that we're able to do this for all the categories and actually try to see that within the top 15, what's the opportunity that your brand has. Within the top 30, what's the opportunity that your brand has. And then there are ways in which we can eventually go down to a list of stores, that which could be these top 15% of the stores that I should ensure that my products are present in. Right? So we can talk about that separately during the breaks or later after this particular conference. But we wanted to showcase is that there are already a lot of opportunities within these 9 states, within the traditional trade outlets itself. And we're happy to discuss and engage with you more as we go forward. But beyond this, we've also heard feedback from you that there are other parts of this country that are becoming important. Be it the other states, be it modern trade as a channel that we don't cover today, or be it even the rural areas that we're not getting into right now. So I'm going to invite Nick, who's our product leader for the region, who's going to talk to us about what are the things we can do to get measurement of these parts of the country that we don't cover today.
Thank you.
It's okay? Okay, thank you. Thank you for attending our event today. So, as Nishan has mentioned, there are lots of opportunity in Myanmar. Myanmar is dynamic. How can we manage, or how can we help you manage managing that dynamic in the environment that you're working in. So, and also we have heard a lot of feedback in terms of, today we are covering 9 states urban. What is next for Nielsen? How can Nielsen help you to better capture the opportunity in the market? So I would like to share what our thoughts are, what we have done so far, and of course we want your feedback. We want to get your input and also to shape how this product roadmap would look like for Myanmar in the next 3 to 5 years. Yeah. First of all, the way we have looked at Myanmar and the way we have built the product roadmap has always been based on the evolution of how yourself as a company enter Myanmar or building your business in Myanmar. So back in 2013, 14, when I think at that time a lot of the companies, the country opened up and a lot of companies are also entering the country, including Nielsen. So back in 2014, that's when Nielsen also entered the market. So the way we have designed our product roadmap was based on, we think that at the early stage, the first thing that you have to do is to build your distribution, to build your visibility of your product to the consumer, to bring your product to the end consumer. So that's why in the initial stage, we have the retail sensors to identify the store, how many stores are out there across the market, which store are the most are the best performing store that you should go into. So that would be the retail sensors, and also in terms of if you start going into the store, how efficient or how effective your execution are into the store. How is your price compared to your competitor? How is your display being executed in the store? Are they being done properly or in the way that you would expect? So those are the key things that we think at the entry stage that's the most important for your business. And as you go through the stages, we also identify that based on the feedback from the clients at that time, that 6 cities were the first area that most of the companies would go into. That's why we decided to start the measurement product or retail index in the 6 key cities, that to help you start measuring your performance, your market share versus your competitor, and also help you monitor your performance. And then as we went through the stage back in 2017, we also worked with you all, and also with the feedback from the clients and our team. We expand coverage to cover 9 states in urban. Yeah. And it's already covering about 50 to 60% of Myanmar consumption based on our estimates. Yeah. And if you look at the overall roadmap, that's how we have built. But along the way, apart from the product launches that we have done so far, we have also introduced or deployed a lot of technology into the way we are doing our product. Back in 2014, when we launched our first, when we were preparing to launch our first retail index, we deployed the handheld terminal right away. We didn't go for the diary or the manual audit. So we had a lot of commitment into Myanmar. We decided to put handheld terminal right from the start. And as we went through the years, we also realized that Myanmar is very dynamic. The universe changes so much. So the way we do the universe update or the way we capture the market dynamics may not be annually, may not be fast enough. That's why back in 2018, we also launched the way we established the retail universe by doing it rolling. So in that, by doing it rolling, it means that we are able to capture the change in the store universe faster and more frequently. Yeah. And then and this year in 2019, we don't stop our innovation. Our data collection team, we also deploy our latest technology. We use quality control tower. We use real-time data collection and QC to make sure that the way we are capturing the data across our 9 states are being controlled, validated, and QC in the way that is the Nielsen standard across the globe. And actually, across not all of the Southeast Asia countries already have this, and Myanmar already have that. Yeah, so, and this is just an example of how our quality control tower or the way we capture the real time. So imagine, this is the map of so this is, for example, we would know exactly where our auditor auditors are. So I think some of you are salespeople. You would know, you have to know where your sales team are in terms of the route that they are supposed to do. Our people have to do the same. We have to have the routes that our auditors have to go and visit the store and collecting the data on a daily basis. So by having this map, and we also have the GPS location of our auditors at all time, so we are able to capture 100% of the store being collected real time, and at the same time, we are able to engage with our auditors on the ground all the time. So in case they have some doubts, oh, okay, there's this new product coming in, is that in scope of our audit? They can have a chat back to our centralized team at the head office through the chatbot or the robot. That we can address those questions right away. And if there are any other question on the ground, our supervisor from the office can connect with them at all times. So this will ensure that basically our people are being taken care of, and at the same time we are able to capture the real-time information. And this would also imagine we have this capability. If, for example, one day you just launched this new product into Yangon, and you just want to know, okay, I have launched this for 20 days. I want to know today, how many stores have you seen my product in Yangon? We can instruct the auditors who are visiting Yangon's stores today. They can capture those information for you and report back real time. That's the capability that comes with what we call Nielsen Live. And so it's part of our data collection to capture and to control our quality, but at the same time it also gives other benefits that the clients can also have. Yeah. And this is just to give you a glimpse of how the way we are working through in terms of the quality control. You imagine we have all this water screen at our office to monitor where our people are, and we have this chat box where we can cater to the questions from the auditor on the ground. And sometimes when they see certain environment, they might even take a picture to verify whether this is the product that we want to check, for example. Yeah. So all of this is just part of the Nielsen development and evolution in terms of improving our quality. Yeah. Now, so we know what we have done so far in the past 4 to 5 years. So what's next? These are the ideas that we have come up with based on the feedback that our team have collected from most of you. Yeah. So the first thing is about state expansion. Today we have 9 states. Are there any other states that you all would like to have expanded into the scope of our retail measurement? The second thing is about modern trade. And we know that modern trade is still pretty small, but it's growing. Is there any specific way that you would like to measure this channel? And the third thing, like Ishan said, there's a lot of distribution opportunities in Myanmar, and rural, I'm sure most of you are trying to penetrate into rural and to win in rural. How can we help you to manage rural in a more efficient way? Yeah. Now, first thing is about state expansion. So we have come up with these 3 states, Kayin, Kachin, and Panim Kari. So these are the 3 states that are mostly border with Thailand. And we know there are lots of border sales, and that could be, and if today we are not capturing them, but I think a lot of clients have provided us feedback that there are a lot of volume that we are not capturing, and that the coverage could be missing a lot of volume because by not covering this. So this is one idea, and I think we would like to understand whether our understanding is right, or is there any other states actually that you will be more interested in. Yeah. So the key benefit for this, obviously, you have an improved coverage of your retail index. You will be able to better capture your performance in a larger coverage. And then what we are thinking of, this is an approximate sample size, because at this stage we haven't really done the proper universe sizing. We think we are looking at about 550 on-premise sample size and about 200 on-premise sample size for these 3 states expansion. And if you look at just to visualize what we are referring to, so on the left here are the states, the 9 states that we are covering today, and the blue one on the right will be where we are proposing to add to Kachin here and Cayenne here and Kayak here. Any questions so far? Yes?
Two things. So right now we're only covering Shan South. Is there a reason we're not covering Shan North?
Mainly because of security. Because when we did try to look at Shan North, as part of this expansion, but we see a lot of issue with the security, and we're not sure about whether people will be able to manage and on a sustainable way. We could be able to do it one day, but the next one we might not be able to enter, and at some point we might not be able to some areas also. I think those are the uncertainty that we are not ready to handle. That's the main reason.
But Shan North, like places like Lashua and all, these are pretty stable places where we sell, our people also go. I don't think there is like
so there's
security
certain
issues.
area in Shan North, right? Not the whole Shan North, right?
Yeah, not the whole Shan North, but at least places, big areas like Lashua, which is a big depot area in fact.
Yeah.
For many companies, many
Yeah,
brands.
I think it's possible if we define or we have a common understanding that when we refer to Shan North, it's just the area that is not, that's not out of bound, that is not within those security issue area. That is possible too.
And another thing is, for Shan North, in areas where it's not quite safe because of the ethnic conflicts. I mean, those are areas that typical FMCG consumer goods companies are not able to have that permanent presence anyway, right? So they would not be considered part of the urban areas anyway, right? So in that case, I'm not sure if I'm following what you're saying, because the areas in Shan North, they are significant economic centers that are urban. So, and they are considered safe territories.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we could explore that, because I think the feedback from our field team is that there are certain areas, not all Shan North, have this issue. And if we agree on the boundary that we want to measure within Shan North, we can do that too.
Because those areas that are having ethnic conflict issues are not urban areas.
But from what we know, they're also part of urban as well. But but I know, Ray, whether you have.
Yeah, actually, what happened is whenever we talk about the audit regularly, so our team need to do everyday basis, right? So for the last 2 years, certain period is stable, even in urban or the rural, but in at least 3 or 4 months, in the particular the area is not very much stable. That's why the field team are still suggesting okay, in terms of the priority, the out of 4, right? The Kachin, Cayenne, and Tanyanari may be in a top priority rather than putting Shan North as the top priority. So what could happen is if we currently are trying to include the Shan North in the region, then in terms of population, we may be able to cover about 1/4 or 1/3 maximum. Then we'll be having a lot of argument in the coverage. So something like that, right? So that's why we just put it as a priority, because Yakai, you may not think about it. Shan East, you still may not be very much thinking. Chen or Kaya is just less than 1% of the population. So these are the area very low populated. So they're only left with 4, like Kachin, Shan North, the Cayenne, and Tanyanari. But in terms of the priority, we try to put okay, if we have to select top 3, then we try to suggest okay, probably should be the Kachin. Even in a Kachin, we try to think okay, whether the Kachin is safer than the Shan North. So, but what we check with in terms of population or in terms of number of outlets we can cover, the Kachin can have a little bit higher in terms of percentage. But as Nick mentioned, okay, if everybody is agree, then we will be selecting the particular township we can go and get agreement. Then we can start some census and the plan for the
next step.
And at the end, just to clarify, like the objective of this part of the session is to trigger this kind of discussions and define together where we want to invest in Myanmar and build this product evolution. So it's great to have these comments.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the objective of the session.
Yeah, and any feedback in terms of the other 3 states or Kashin, yes?
If the cost doesn't increase, so I'm perfect. We're left with no choice, pay more. When 6 to 9, we have to pay more. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't come to, you have asked the very direct question, and I prepared that. This is very ballpark, because as I told you, we just prepared this very ballpark design and estimates, just to give you some idea on what kind of investment it's all about to get this, right? The timeline, so let's start with the timeline. We estimate that there will be, because when we want to do this, we have to start with identifying the universe. So we have to do census to get all the store and how many stores and all those kind of things. So we think that it's going to take us around 10 to 12 months to set this up and start reporting the index to you. But by the 3rd month, we should be able to start sharing the store list in these 3 states with you. And also along the setup time, we could be sharing some insights before the final delivery. And these are the common process that we go through. So all of these, they are not finalized, because we obviously want your input as an industry, as our client advisory council, to shape how this should look like and when this should happen. So yes, and the ballpark investment here is based on 750 sample, about 20 to 35% of what you're paying today. Thoughts? First reaction?
First reaction. If we go -3, so you're gonna give 35% discount.
Sorry? Yeah, I think understand.
Just one question related to what you were asking earlier, because I was trying to understand. You're shooting the question to us, like, where are these states that we need to go after? And I was just wondering, what is the best way to kind of like figure this out? Because I understand that you guys are doing some sort of outlet census. If not, I guess it should be done.
Yes.
Because I don't know whether, if you look at the FMCG, do you think that there are very different buckets of the regions? The consumption pattern is very different. So, for example, for me, Shanghai could be very important, but for the others, not. I don't think this is really a possibility. So if this in mind, wouldn't it be better to cover the whole country in terms of understanding where these outlets are, what is their contribution, and you tell us these are the areas that we need to go, and we just say, okay.
And to follow up on that, right? So I think ultimately what we'd like to get a very clear idea is when we say Myanmar is growing X%, we want that number to be as close to reality as possible, right? We don't really care whether you are visiting 5,000 outlets or 500 outlets, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And right now we're far from that, right? And for us as customers, that's ultimately what we care about.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think that's the ultimate goal for Nielsen as well, to have the best representation of the retail FMCG to our clients. But at the same time, we also have to balance, because Myanmar is still quite new, and we have a number of clients in Myanmar. The syndication of our product is still quite small when you compare with the other markets. So if you look at when you look at this pricing, 20 to 35%, you are already saying, oh, okay, this is high, right? So how can we, ideally, if we go with 100% in also in rural, the investment will more than double. So we need to balance. That's why we have to prioritize, and to prioritize, we need your help, because sometimes we know where those pockets of growth are. And for example, we decided on the 9 states because those 9 states has the most population, the consumption potential, because we did the census. We know that's why we did that 9 states as a priority. But then beyond 9 states, whether it's rural 9 states or the 15 states remaining, that's from our assessment so far will be lesser priority because we want to make sure that you get the most out of our product at a reasonable investment level as well. That's what we always try to achieve. So that's why we can tell, we can suggest what would be the ideal product, but then when it comes to investment, that's where we need your support and feedback and alignment. Okay. The second thing, modern trade. We know that modern trade is still pretty small, but could be big for some particular sector. But in general, we estimate that modern trade will be about 10% of the total consumption of FMCG. Yeah, and then we know that it's also growing. There are new stores opening, especially in Yangon and Mandalay City. So what we are proposing today are two ideas. The first idea is about the execution, the store observation, to help you monitor what you're doing in the store in terms of the price, the display, promotion, how effective that promotion are. And then the second approach will be the retail index. I'll take you through our ideas and then just like your thoughts. So store observation, we are thinking of creating what we call a syndicated store observation check. So we select the top store, 100 stores of modern trade, supermarket, and CVS across Mandalay and Yangon City. And then we send our people in on a monthly basis or weekly basis to collect all those store observation measures. Price, basic display, subject to getting the permission to get into the store. So we'll have to work on that as well. So in terms of the key benefits, obviously your key account team, your trade marketing team will handle this key account, will be able to get a market benchmark of how your product are being executed versus relative to your competitor. If you have the access to the sales, we could also link your execution to the sale performance. So linkage to sale is key in terms of measuring your effectiveness of those store observation. And we'll be doing that on a mobile application with our latest technology. The quality will be up to that standard. What's your thoughts so far on this particular thing? Interesting? Not interested? Nice to know?
We probably can do it ourselves.
Oh, do it.
Because it's only 100 stores.
Yeah.
And most of the pricing are quite controlled by the modern trade.
Yeah. I think my only thoughts about how we could contribute is that we are the third party. So the way we will be capturing the information there will be non-biased. So you have the right information, and also we can provide the analysis, the linkage to sales analysis as part of the service. Okay. So in terms of setting this up, very quick, subject to, so first of all, we need to get the access into the store. Then we align on what are the key measures we want to collect, or which categories we want to do. This doesn't have to be for every single categories in the industry. So it only takes about 1 to 2 months to set up, and then every month you will get the report. And the investment will be 15 to 25K per year, USD per category for those 100 stores. And this is based on our assumption that there will be at least 3 clients subscribing to this. And all these are ballpark. If the scope is smaller, if we we don't need Mandalay, we just want Yangon, this can be shaped in the way that it address what you want. The second approach, modern trade. We have a measurement in traditional trade. Now we have 9 states urban already. So the modern trade is like the missing piece in the marketplace. So of course, if we have this, what is going to benefit you is you have the visibility to the total modern trade as a channel, how it's evolving, and how you're performing in that growing channel, and not just at the key account level. What we are proposing to do are three things. So we are looking at leveraging a crowdsourcing technology to crowdsource the data from the retailers who would not give us the direct POS. So because to get the modern trade retail index up and running, we need the data on the retail index. We need to get cooperation. We have to go and talk to each of the retailer to get the data. But we will be doing that for sure as part of the process. But for those who would not be or who are not ready to share the data with us, we'll be using the crowdsourcing technology. What does it mean? Let me show you. Basically, we do have partner company who can do this end-to-end crowdsourcing. So imagine you are a customer. You go into a city mart and you do your shopping. If you become our panel or our user, I will recruit you, and every time, and you will need to download my application. This in mobile. Every time you do your shopping at City Mart or ABC or Grab and Go, you scan the receipts of your purchase. You send it to us on mobile, and every time you scan and send receipt to us, you earn points, and you will earn cash rewards. So there are incentives for people who are doing this for us. At the same time, we will collect receipts information that will be enough for us to do the estimation of the sales of the retailers who are not giving us the direct POS data. So we could combine those information from receipts. We will use the technology to once we get the receipts, right, we'll have the OCR technology to scan and transcribe those information down to every single SKU that is being written on the receipts with the name of the item, barcode if it exists, the price, and then we can use that to help us with the estimation and make it a modern trade retail index. And with this amount of information and receipts that we collect, we can, and this they will be doing it ongoingly for us, right? Imagine if you want to understand the behavior of, so if you just implement something in Grab and Go, and you want to understand whether people of this profile is actually collecting or is actually buying your product along with another item that you think it should go together, we could use that, we could pull those information and create a snapshot insights report back to you as well. So there are lots of things that we could do with the wealth of information that we'll be getting from the receipt, apart from using it to estimate for the modern trade retail index. And we have done this before. We have done this with this company in the UK, in Colombia, in Ecuador, and now in the Philippines as well. So we are ready, if there is enough interest, we can deploy this in Myanmar right away. And the process that we will go through to do this, we need to start by piloting to get the penetration of the receipts of the items that are being purchased by the different chains that we want to crowdsource. We recruit the independent chain, the modern trade chain, do the coding and processing. So we are looking at about 6 to 12 months setup time, and the ballpark investment ranges from 20 to 40% of the retail index fee today per year per category. Thoughts? Okay, move on to rural. I think rural will be very interesting for most of us here. Again, we have to approach, because I think we always have to come up with something that will be affordable, at the same time provide insights, and it depends on the stages where your companies are in terms of rural penetration. As Nisham said, a lot of distribution opportunity, but then how can you maximize those opportunities? How can you make it most effective? So the first approach will be distribution check, and the second approach will be the regular retail index measurement, where you get the full comprehensive read of the market. if you just like to recap on what we think about the rural, because now when it comes to urban, I think it's a common knowledge that we look at townships and the wards, right? But then when it comes to rural, there are altogether in Myanmar about 66,000 villages, and these 66,000 villages belong to 13,000 village tracts. And from what we see and the way the village tracts are being organized, so basically one village tract would have about 5 to 6 villages under it. But then in each of the village tracts, the main village tract, or the biggest village basically would have all the facilities, would have the clinic, would have most of the stores, and consumption would happen in the main village tract. So we are proposing that when we look at rural measurement, we want to look at these 13,000 village tracts instead of going to every single 66,000 villages. Because for what we know, the behavior of people so imagine there are 5 villages grouped together, and then we have one centralized village tract who is like the headquarter of that village tract. Then the behavior is that by distance, there could be one or two stores in the small villages, and they could be traveling into the main village tract to buy their supply, and then resell in their little stores. But then the majority of the consumption would happen at the village tract. So what we are thinking here is we capture the village, the rural consumption at the village tract. Any ideas, any thoughts to add to this? So the first approach, if you think about the village tract, just the main one, not every single rural villages, we could do we call it syndicated, very large-scale distribution check across these village tracts in the United States. And we are thinking of about over 2,500 in off-premise outlets and 800 to 900 on-premise outlets for this scope. This is just an initial suggestion. We could collect selected. So this is like an omnibus kind of thing. So each round, if we do this, we would get, okay, your company, you want your top 5 SKUs monitor, then we collect from other, and then we do this in one go. So that is syndicating the effort and also making the price much more affordable for everyone. We could do this, and then with this we can report it by states or even lower than the states level. We could look at by each of the village tracts even, because we don't need to talk about the representation or estimating to the universe. We want to monitor your execution versus your competitor and relative over time. We could do this once a year or quarterly. It's all up to the industry how often you want this to be done. And we could collect shelf price, facing, distribution, availability, out of stock in rural. And because we do have we are doing the rural census as we speak, and we do have the capability to prioritize the store that has the most weight. That Nishan was just saying that a lot of from what we see is that the numeric distribution tend to be very similar to the weight. It means that the store that you're going mostly are not the larger store. So what we are thinking is that we'll use our analytics to choose the larger stores, and then you will monitor your distribution in those larger stores on a regular basis, so that you understand how you're improving your distribution. So this could be a good, we think this could be a good solution for you to penetrating and get your product out to the consumer in the rural. And the process for this, we need about 3 to 5 months to do each of the wave, because if you look at about 3,000 to 4,000 of sample size across the village tracts, and but by the 3rd month you would start to get the data. You will get to see your distribution across the different stores in the village tract, and the fee per study is 30K per wave. This is very ballpark. Depends on the final scope that we all agree that we want to do. So And then the second approach would be what you know best, retail index in rural. Yeah, but then you imagine the rural, we have the population of almost 60%. If you just look at the what we are thinking now is because today we have 9 states urban, the plan is to expand to rural in those 9 states. And with that, we are going to increase in terms of the population coverage by about 30%. From today, we are covering about 27% of population to about 60%. And we will basically double the sample size to make sure that we have a good representation of the rural. There are options for retail index to make this. So if we link this design and the benefits to the clients with the investment that you have to pay, we do have a number of options that we could manage this. For example, instead of doing the full retail index with, or what you see, the absolute sales via SKU, we have what we call RMS Lite version. So basically with Lite version, we don't need as much sample size, as many sample size. And then what we can report is total category absolute sales. But then underneath, we will only report market share. So you will have a sense of what is your market share in rural. You will know what is your distribution, what is your weighted distribution, but you won't get the absolute sales for each of the SKU, but you will get the total category. With that lighter design, the sample size will come down and the investment will also come down as well. So these are all options that we are flexible, that we can tailor to what is the right fit for Myanmar and all of you. And it will take us about 12 to 14 months. Rural is a pretty large area that we will go through, but because we have the sensors already going in rural, so we would already know the universe, so we won't have to go through that again. So if you look at doubling the sample size, then the investment could be about 60% from what you're paying today, up to about double, depending on the final sample size or the design of the product that would still address your need, but at the same time have the right investment level for you as well. So in terms of the key things is that what we are proposing today are just ideas. We need your feedback. That's why I think the Client Advisory Council is here so that we collect what you think will be relevant to your business. And once we have that industry alignment, then we will come back with the more definite proposal with the cost and the timeline before we go ahead with the decision. Any question before I close this session? Okay, so we're going to have a small tea break for 10 minutes. After this, then we will have a small session just to collect your feedback on what you have heard so far from the first half of the session. Thank you.
Ready? Richard is very proud of you. He's very proud. Eddie with the overseas.
I'm good. Yes. Just sorry a little bit because we had some meetings with
Yes, it's a growing category, definitely. We see more
but I think it's something
more worried concerned with the appearance. The yellow color is really coming strong. So we just came out with a yellow color is what became
he was supposed to be here, but he's being tied out in so unfortunately. So I know you people expect this one.
Our category is very dynamic. No category.
Of course, it only has to be done. So I just think we'll probably take this back with us and then we'll do a bit of discussion. But I think it's a first step, so it's really need to totally understand it. You can plan how you want to invest regardless whether the client is some so I think that's so we'll have to look at that together so
Present your voice in a while, discuss.
I think usually it's like that. Focus on so just generating information. So that's why I we understand you for at the same time we need a little bit of flexibility.
As long as we're free to go to your office. We do. Clients also several requests for this year. They also are exploring the market. It's first time next year. Where there's no established data. Those particular topics that we want to discuss. Because there are a lot of new categories. Even as they said, we don't have the data.
We may have to do some so we're good. I'm good. You can.
哦，三有㗎，幾好啊！Right, welcome back everyone. Welcome back from the coffee break. As Nick mentioned just before we were getting into the break, is that what we want to do very importantly as we come back is actually try and hear your feedback, the client voice regarding what we've spoken about so far. One of the key agenda of the discussion today is to actually get your advice on some of the enhancements that we talked about, and try to really understand which one of these are most relevant to you, so that we're able to kind of build on those a little more in detail. So you would have received feedback from that our teams would have distributed during the previous session. Maybe some of you have already done this. We just request you to maybe capture some of your feedback on that particular form. You'll see a table which has the 5 enhancements that we've talked about so far. It would be great if you're able to rank those 5 enhancements basis what's most relevant to your business at this point in time. Please rank 1 to the enhancement that's most relevant to you and 5 which is least relevant. We've also kept an open space for you to capture your comments, be it related to the methodology, be it related to timing, costing, or any of the other aspects. Feel free to let us know. It'll just help us have more specific conversations with you as we go forward. Probably take about 5 minutes in case we haven't already captured that feedback. And then we'd like to open it up to hear any other feedback from you before we just give a quick preview of 2 new capabilities that we want to introduce to this market.
What is the favor either 1 or 5?
So
you could 2, 3, 4.
No, we want you to fill all the 1, 2, 3, 4.
Highest one.
1 is the highest one, 5 is the lowest.
In between 2, 3, 4.
In between, we'll let you decide. There's also the second part of the feedback form which you could probably hold on till we talk about the 2 new capabilities so that you're able to help us with your feedback on those as well. So I suppose everyone has been able to lock in your feedback. So thank you so much for that. In the interest of time, we'll move on to the next section. But we'd love to catch up with you one-on-one, perhaps at the end of this conference, if you have any specific question or any specific feedback you'd like to share with us. So for the next section, now we're getting into a couple of new capabilities that we're introducing in this market, which is going to bring a lot more speed, a lot more specificity in the insights and in the in the actions that you'll be able to generate out of our solutions. So let me invite Mamita to talk to us about retail analytics.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Vincent. Alright, so I did not take a lot of time, and given that we have already passed the threshold of time for today evening, I would request you to park the questions, and we have a booth in the next hall. We have some interesting videos on analytics where we can have a very lengthy discussion, right? So without delaying it further, let me start. So till now, what you saw was retail measurements. Oh, I'm not audible? Better? No. Better? Okay. Alright, so till now what we have seen is retail measurement. You have the data in your hand. Very interesting data. You know how your trends are moving, you know how your sales are moving, your market share is moving, right? You can look at the data and gain an idea of what is your performance. But what happens when you have some questions which cannot be answered by just a glance at the data, right? That's where we come in, right? So what does retail analytics do? So we take the RMS data, we do some magic on it, alright? And we help you understand the why behind it. If your sales is changing from year to year, what are the reasons? What is driving it in the market? Right? If your market share is changing, why is it changing? Right? Why is it important to understand that? So that you can take more precise data-oriented decisions and on time. Right? Before the trouble comes in, anticipate it. Based on the current data that we have in Myanmar, we have shortlisted these solutions for this market. So AEC has a very huge portfolio. So this is a part of AEC. Right? These are the first go-to services for any clients that we have worked with. We have divided these services into three parts. So first is which stores. When you are launching a product or when you are entering into a category, or even if you are an existing category, what's the first decision that you take? Which store shall I place my products in? Right? So there are some questions related to that which we will take a look at. Then it will be which product do I place? Where? I have the stores, what product do I place in them? And then there is how to drive the performance in the store. Okay? So which stores? So Nishank already talked about something called concentration curve, although he didn't name it. So we saw the very beautiful curve of sales and distribution. That's concentration curve. Okay. What does it do? It is basically telling you for a category, which are my strong performing areas. How many percentage of the stores contribute to my maximum of my sales, and in those areas, how is my distribution looking like? Okay. Or my sales per store is looking like. Okay. Once you have that, okay, you know that these are the areas where I need to be present in. What is the definition which is separating your target stores with your non-target stores? So you know that, okay, these 5 stores are very important for me versus these 10 stores are not important. What is the difference in them? Okay. So that is where SEO profiling and benchmarking come in. So your target stores can be differentiated based on a set of characteristics which can range from as simple as it has 2 refrigerators in it, alright, to as complex as it carries X number of categories. Okay? That's how the profiling is done. Then we have direct versus indirect. So this is basically telling you that, alright, now we have the stores. So we know my gold stores. So concentration curve is dividing my market into gold, silver and bronze. So gold is my most important number of stores. Out of that, how many of the stores are directly service stores? So I am reaching those stores directly. Why is it important to know? Because from what research says is most of the sales is being driven by the direct stores, even though they are less in quantity than indirect stores. Okay. And then comes micro market prioritization. So now we have stores, we know the profiling, we know the benchmarking, but we have limited resources. We cannot reach all the stores at one time. So we prioritize. Out of those gold districts, where is there a gap? Okay. So let's take a look at a little bit of detail. How do we do it? On the left side, we have our Nielsen census and retail panel data, and we have government data. So this is basically about the demographic, your socio-economic condition, population, anything that can drive your purchase. Then we do some statistics, and again some magic, and we list out a high potential district or townships in this case. Right? So the output will look like something on the left. This is a map from Bangkok, pardon me for that. So you can see different colors. So what does it mean? So the yellow highlighted ones are your gold stores. These are the most priority district for you to reach. Right? And you see the dots on them? Those are your stores. So there's audited, unaudited, and wholesalers. What does it tell you? That there's high coverage and high gap in those markets. In the ones highlighted in yellow. So you are selling a lot. These are your potential areas where you can sell a lot, but you don't have a lot of stores in that. Okay? So you need to increase your distribution here. Those are your focus areas. Right? Then we have high coverage and low gap. So these are the areas where the category has more potential to sell, and you also are present in a maximum number of stores. Right? Then we have low coverage, high gap. So this is the ranking. Another thing that we can do is we can overlay this map with the direct stores from you. Right? So we can check in which of these areas your direct stores are present and what's the gap. So increasing your direct coverage basically. Okay? Alright. So now we have the stores, we know which stores to go to, we know the priority of the stores. Now we need to decide the products. Which products to place where. Okay. So first we have range analysis. This is done to understand the changes in market share. Okay. So from point 1 of time period to point 2 of time period, the market share has changed. Why has it changed? Is it because you have a new entry in the market? Is it because of your SKU combinations being changed in the market? Okay. So that's where range analysis comes in. Another thing is your exercised preference share. So if a consumer is going in the store and they see your brand as well as a competition brand, which one does he pick? If he picks your brand, you have more exercised preference in that store. Okay. So this is to focus on in which stores do you need to increase your distribution versus in which stores do you need to increase your preference. Okay. Then we have new launch analysis. This is showing that you have launched a new product in the market. You need to track it. You cannot just launch and forget it, right? You need to track. You need to track the performance. What is the distribution build-up? What is the market share build-up? What are the potential threats it is facing? Which competition it is facing? Also where it is sourcing from. So it might also give competition to some of your key competitors, right? And then we have overlap analysis. So what is that? So overlap analysis is basically you can do it between your brand versus a competitor brand, or also within your brand. Okay. So one of the key examples that we have seen this service being leveraged is in pack size. Okay. So if I'm launching a new pack size in the store, I need to understand, does it cannibalize my own other pack size? Another pack size of my own brand. Okay. So this is where we do. So we check a simple overlap analysis is where my pack size A is present, pack size B is present versus where both are present. In this case, this is an example of two different brands. What do we see here? So when we check the key measures like distribution and everything, sales, value share, what do we see is that brand A has some stores where it is selling individually, brand B has some stores where it is selling individually. Very good performance, but when they both are together in some stores, we see that the brand B is selling less than brand A. This is where this analysis comes in. So quite often we have seen some examples where client thinks that, okay, this is my main competitor in the market. But when we do this, we see, but you don't have that much of overlapping stores. There's only maybe 10 to 15% of stores where you both are present. So are you sure that's your primary competition? What happens? We have seen those cases. So that's where this analysis is very helpful. Okay? So once now we have the stores, we have the products, we have everything perfect. But how do we drive the performance in the store? What will motivate the consumers to buy my product? So the first thing is price. Naturally, whenever I am buying a product, I first check the price. Right? So is there room to increase my price? Should I be decreasing my price? Basically checking the price elasticity of my product. If I change my price by 1%, what will be the impact on my volume? Okay? We do this by SKU. And then there's in-store drive. So apart from price, there are some factors in store which are affecting my sales, which could be like number of facings, service frequency, rack for shelves that I have, stock availability, right? So again we run a model, store level model, which is basically identifying the significant factors which is driving my sales, and also we are quantifying their impact. So if from year 1 to year 2, my sales has changed by 5%, out of that 5%, 18% here is driven by stock availability. 14% is driven by the SKU mix, the number of SKUs present in the store. So this is a statistical list in ranking and the quantification, right? Thank you for not interrupting and asking questions, but I do have some time. So now please let me know if you have some questions which I can address right now. No questions? I was that good?
Sorry, maybe you mentioned already, but where will be the place for this research? Only in Gabon or Monterey is also possible, or nationwide?
Wherever we have analyst data.
9 states, okay.
Is this more syndicated sort of a analysis that you provide, or is it on request basis, or is it like available always whenever?
So this is ad hoc basis.
Okay.
So you have to give us a brief on this. This is a business question. Even if you don't specify which service you want, you give us a brief that this is my problem which is happening in the market. And for example, I'm facing a decline in market share. What do you as Nielsen suggest we can look at? So we can come back to you, after checking the data, we can come back to you with a set of solutions that can help you. Right? You have some materials which we shared with you in the beginning of the session, the file. It has all the 10 solutions already. Even though I took you through only 3, those were the key ones in each section. We have all the solutions present there, and we are available in the booth in next door. So if you have any questions about this, just let me know. I have my team member B, and there's Vincent who has been cheering me from back. Yes.
I think this is really good, alright, because it's based on the current set of data that we have. What we do right now is always look at value share, volume share, numeric. It's so one-dimensional.
Yes.
So I think it's very good that you have this analytics based on our request that you can provide us the relevant charts. I think that's really good.
Thank you.
just to add to what Namita was saying, right? I mean, it's a long list, and obviously we don't expect you to kind of remember all the solutions that we have to offer. And a lot of times we can actually create a combination of these, depending on really what your question is. So really, all that we want to encourage you is, share some of your business questions, which perhaps today the RMS data by itself is not able to answer. Because perhaps going forward, we may be able to, with these capabilities now available, we may be able to suggest a more specific way to answer that particular business question by using some of these. And at the booth later, we'll be able to show you some of these capabilities live in action, so it gets you a feeling of what's the output you can expect from it.
And you have my email address on all the pages in your file. So just talk to me. So without wasting much time, I will invite Noy to take over.
Hi everyone, my name is Noy. I'm from Input Operations for Thailand and Myanmar. And today you might have heard a lot of technologies that Nielsen invests lately, and that comes into a new capabilities that we can show you the real-time data via the dashboard. Let me explain to you what is the new solutions and capabilities that I'm talking about. So our technologies and platform is built based on these three principles, where we would like to stay relevant to the market, look at the data, agile, faster, and also create accountabilities and also trust assurance from the data that we can get, which is this bring us a new capability where we can show this data in a faster times. In the past, you might need to wait 1 month until the cycle ends, and you might need to wait a week or a couple of weeks more to get the report. And this definitely can help you to eliminate what definitely keeps you up at night. Definitely all of us in the FMCG world, these are probably the questions that you might think about before you go to bed. My product is available in the store or not? This helps you understand the distribution, right? And wondering whether the price is right. Are they compliant to the suggested price that you provide or not? Especially in this market where the price tag is not mandatory. So most of the time we might not so sure what is the price that is selling in on-premise and off-premise. Now we have a solution that can answer this. Also the product launch, we know that the product itself maybe is very good, functionality-wise, flavor-wise is very good. How about the distribution? If it not reach to the targeted store, how the product can be successful? Our stock, I think all of us are aware of this. And this is definitely the things that can hold us from having a good sales in the following months if the numbers of our stock is high. Right? And also, what is the response? What is the feelings, the point of view of the store owner that have with your products? All of this in the past, they might need to take time to be able to address, to be able to realize all the information. But we have a simple solutions that can help you right now to stay ahead of the market and relevant. So we have a simple solution here where you can place the order through the web-based platform. At the client request page, you can define the SKU that you concern. You can define the market that you would like to target. And then it will compute the cost before you can place your request. Thus, next day, when our auditor is in field, right after they take the data, they upload into the platform, you will be able to view all of the information that you have predefined on the first step through each of the use case here. Everyone in the company that's sharing the same, for example, like at Coca-Cola.com, everyone in the same company able to view the same use case and be able to take an action and also an execution plan by not waiting. You have information now. You take it now and you will understand faster. Especially if in the past we might not have visibilities that in each of the area, are they having any challenge? Are they performing well? Are they able to grab the opportunities? This information is simple and faster. What is our capabilities that we have right now? First, we have distribution this product distribution, you can redefine by SKU level or grouping it together. Next, we have new product launch. You just simply tell us the products that you would like to track. And right after you launch the product in the market, we will be able to capture and share the report by the market data that you have been defined. Second, the third one, out of stock. For the out of stock, it will also the same distribution report, but we will be able to tell you whether the stock, the products that you have defined is out of stock in which market right now. Next one, price to consumer. This one, normally in NAD, the price in NAD will be an average price. But here, for the price to consumer, we will be able to demonstrate the price point that is really selling to the consumer. Then we have the same concept, but another one is price to retailer, which is the retailer purchasing price, which will help you to understand a real margin of each of the products. Last one, custom questions. If you would like to have a fast response feedback from the store owner, for example, whether you would like to check the source of purchase, you would like to understand whether the POSM has been activated in the store as what you have been designed or not, these capabilities can help you to tweak them faster. The last one, we can also use the same technologies to plug into store observation. We call this one user life for store observation survey. If you already have this service with us right now, where we program our data collection tools, we can plug in some defined key questions and also key answers into the dashboard. And then after we integrate it, you will be able to see the performance of each key defined questions against the market. At the same time, you will be able to see the graphical report, and also you can download the CSV format. And all of this is on demand. You can check the data on daily basis at any time, and you will be able to understand the store that compliance, the store that not compliance, and be able to take decisions right after that. So all of this is no need to wait anymore. This is real-time information, and we have a live booth that you can stop by to look at the products and also the videos that we have prepared, as well as all of these use cases. You can make a decisions like this use case basis. You don't need to have a very large investment here. It go bit by bit. Any questions? So this solution is like an add-on onto the NSO study. In case that you already have an NSO study with us already, this can be built on top of that to have the key questions that you already have it, but this can be live at real time. Any other questions? Yes, please.
How many stores will you cover this service?
For these solutions, it's going to be client-defined store. For example, if you already have your set of target store that you would like to measure the set effectiveness, you can provide the list. We will do the store execution measurement, and at the same time, we will provide the report where you can view the capabilities of the performance of each of the market that you have been defined in this dashboard. But the previous service that I have been talking about, it is the service that add on into the retail index that currently cover 9 states. Instead of, we can wait for the data like after the cycle end, plus the report out, then we started to see the performance and then take an action, what we would like to take an action. But here, the data can show you day by day accumulatives, and this help you to predict what needs to be done. Should I wait or should I act now?
Actually, I didn't understand. These out of stocks are suppose in the month of April data cycle. In May, when I get the data, I see that there is an out of stock in so many places. So I want to know now, is it like which shops I am out of stock, or more detailed where I am out of stock? So I get a fair understanding of which market I am out of stock. So what detail you give over here?
Okay, very good questions, because this is based on our sample store. So we might not be able to give you into the level at this one, where this report you can extract, see the store location, latitude, longitude we can provide. However, this report is based on the current eye panel, where we can do the better market breakdown, and at the same time, at that market breakdown, it's going to be more granular. The granularity will be better than the current RI. However, this data is point to point. It's not projected. It will be accumulated. It will be an accumulation, show you in percentage.
So
but
if I can just add on, right? So, for example, today, like you said, your April data, you get it in May and you get to see what's happening to your out of stock trends, right? If let's say in May you realize that your out of stock levels in April had actually increased, the advantage that you get with this is that in April, while we are doing the audit itself, if you are seeing the proportion of stores your product is out of stock, you can actually track it during April itself and immediately fix it, versus realizing in May that you are actually out of stock.
Okay.
So because it's real time, as and when we finish the audit, you'll already get the accumulated score. When Noy mentioned that it is point to point, basically what she means is that it's unprojected data, but if I'm auditing, let's say 1,000 stores for a category, as I'm finishing every single store, for these key KPIs, the status would actually get accumulated and added onto the dashboard. So you're able to actually track it on a real-time basis, and if you see, you know what, this number is going up, you can already trigger a conversation with your sales team and figure out if any action needs to be taken at that point in time or something.
Okay.
The other ones, like the price to consumer, for example, like I mentioned, today you see an aggregated average price, but maybe there are different price points that are selling across these set of stores. So this could actually allow you to understand what's the range of prices, you know, that your product is actually selling in.
So it's basically range.
Not
that
range.
you point to point.
What I mean is, if
point
you
to
get a
point.
specific price
point.
Okay.
but if your product was, let's say, 1,000 checks, but in reality there are certain stores selling at 1,050, there are certain stores selling at 1,100, certain stores selling at 900, because there isn't a printed price. You could actually know how many stores are selling at 900, how many are selling at 1,050, so on and so forth.
Is there any way to figure out like how much of out of stock is contributing to a drop in SPPT? So whereby I can take an action whether I should focus on out of stock or more on offtake related from the same stores. Is there any way to capture that over here?
Not through this, but through the ASC solutions we could answer that. And you know, we'll be happy to discuss that a little more in details, because there is way for us to actually flag out the stores that you were out of stock and not out of stock, and actually see, try to simulate what could have been the impact because you went out of stock in a particular store. So there are ways to answer those questions.
Thank you. Any other questions that you may have? If not, I really want to encourage you to visit our booth. It's going to be on the way to the dinner hall, but we have set up 3 booths. One is ASC, one is Nielsen Live, and also another one is our latest capabilities, which is QCT, and also the device that we use right now, LightJGT, where we can track the performance of our auditors on real times where they are on the ground, and that's all of these technologies built based on that. And any questions that you may have, our staff is waiting there to answer your questions. And we also have emails on the documents on your folder, so feel free to contact us for more information.
Thank you. With that, can I invite Mahindra for the closing notes?
Okay, we have reached the end of our client advisory concert events today. We really appreciate the engagements and contributions from all of you. To wrap up this event, I will briefly like to review some key messages presented today. First, we are talking about what is happening in Myanmar. in spite of high inflationary pressure, we are seeing that initial signs of consumers, opening up and spending more on the FMCG consumptions. However, we need to be mindful of some trends. For example, cheaper and low-priced products grow very faster across the country. But premium products have a higher opportunity in the lower Myanmar. And our places of consumption also seems to be shifted as we see a higher opportunity in the higher opportunity from the off-premises outlet. Upcoming states like for the upcoming states like Bago, Ayeyarwady, Sagaing provide the exceptional growth opportunity. Finally, the distribution is our key driving growth for the growth. So we, of course, there is evidence opportunity for the distribution optimization as well. So please engage with our team to discuss more and how that could be enabled for your brands. In section 2, it's a retail index, retail enhancements. That one is we propose the design to measure the performance in modern trade channels and additional state as well as the rural area. Why these are the initial proposal? Your consolidated feedbacks really help us to prioritize our the most important initiative and to get more information into more details for the implementations. Thank you for the feedback you have shared with us. We will summarize the feedback and share that with you. Last not the least, for our new solutions. We are also excited for bringing the new product to Myanmar, namely Nielsen Live and Retail Analytics, which bring more speed and specific insight and the recommendations for your business questions. So to know more about our new solutions, there is our booths on the way to the dining rooms, dining areas today. So please have a stop and discuss with our team and how could this help for your decision making. Lastly, on behalf of Nielsen MMRD, we really thank you for your participation today. We really appreciate for your participation today, and please join with us for dinner at the Eureka Lounge after you have a closer look at our new capability. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being so patient with us. We've overshot the time that we planned for. Just a quick reminder, if you could also help us share some of the feedback. We've heard some of your feedback on some of the new capabilities. Also, any feedback on the council itself. This is the first time we've done this. Certainly, your feedback will help us, make it even more effective for the next time. So please do share that feedback with us, and we'll be happy to escort you to the dining area. Thank you once again.